welcome to the debate. Buying a Formula One car is a really thrilling concept. You get it delivered, you sit in the cockpit, you feel the sheer horsepower vibrating through the chassis.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you try to drive that machine in Midtown Manhattan during rush hour traffic, you are not going to get to your destination any faster than a person riding a bicycle right next to you. In fact, you might get there slower.
Right, because the machine has an incredible potential speed, but the environment completely constrains it. You're just sitting there, burning highly expensive fuel at a red light, completely surrounded by gridlock.
Exactly. So today, we are looking at the realities of enterprise artificial intelligence. We're specifically examining what Jonathan H. Westover's recent article defines as productivity paradox 2.0.
Right, the new paradox.
Yeah, and we are looking closely at the groundbreaking 2026 data from Chatterjee and colleagues. This tracked over 1,500 ChatGPT enterprise organizations and analyzed roughly 17 million workplace messages.
That is a massive data set.
It really is, and the central question we are exploring today is this. Individual workers are reporting that they save like 40 to 60 minutes daily using generative AI. Yet, according to McKinsey's corresponding data, 74% of organizations report absolutely no tangible value from their AI investments.
Yeah, the individual is speeding up, but the enterprise is standing completely still.
That is the paradox. Now, my position is that this paradox is simply a temporary lag. AI is what economists call a general-purpose technology.
Okay.
The data shows that unlocking massive aggregate enterprise productivity is entirely possible, but it requires deep, complementary investments in data infrastructure and a complete redesign of how work flows through a company.
Right, you have to change the environment.
Exactly. The technology isn't failing. The organizations just haven't finished rebuilding the roads around it.
And I maintain that this paradox reveals fundamental, deeply rooted frictions in human-AI collaboration. I mean, the popular narrative of an inevitable, seamless, enterprise-wide transformation is flawed.
You think so?
I do. When you look closely at the data, broad adoption is actually masking a harsh reality. AI is primarily an accelerator for routine, task-level work, rather than a catalyst for holistic organizational transformation.
Well, to understand this, I think we need to look at the timeline of how organizations actually learn to use new tools. Granting technology access, just buying the Formula One car, is merely step one of a multi-year journey.
Right, of course.
The Chatterjee data is really illuminating here. They found a 4-fold increase in token output within existing adopting firms over just a 9-month period.
4-fold. That's a huge jump.
It is. And for those listening who might not be in the weeds on the terminology, token output essentially measures the volume of data and text the AI is processing and generating.
Okay, yeah.
So this isn't just a spike from new companies buying licenses. These are organizations that adopted AI by June 2025, and they significantly deepened their daily usage by March 2026.
I see that volume increase, but a volume of tokens doesn't automatically equate to the value of the output. I mean, more words doesn't mean better work.
Well, that's a fair bit of distinction, but I think the volume proves active, persistent experimentation. The gap we are seeing in organizational productivity isn't a failure of the artificial intelligence. It is a failure of organizational design. Early adopters in this dataset aren't just throwing software at their staff and hoping for the best. They are companies with massive intangible capital.
Let me pause you there because intangible capital is a term that gets thrown around in economics a lot. Let's ground that for the listener. What exactly is that money buying?
It's a great point. Intangible capital refers to the invisible structural assets of a company. It's not physical buildings or machines.
Right.
It's things like deep data cleaning teams, custom API connections, specialized training protocols, and, completely restructured employee incentive programs.
Okay, so it's the operational scaffolding.
Exactly. The data shows the median research and development spending for these early adopters is $113 million. That's compared to just $10 million for non-adopters.
Wow.
Yeah, that $113 million is what it costs to clear the traffic jam so the car can actually drive. They are investing heavily in the scaffolding around the AI.
The problem with this narrative of inevitable transformation, though, is that it assumes every company can or will successfully rebuild those roads.
Well, sure, not everyone will succeed.
Right, but I look at this exact same data and see a localized, specific tool being forced into the role of a holistic savior. If you want to understand the productivity paradox, you have to look at the friction on the ground.
What kind of friction?
Well, a recent California Management Review meta-analysis reveals a fascinating dynamic. Human AI teams often underperform compared to humans or AI working independently.
Wait, they underperform? Walk me through how adding a massive intelligence engine to a human worker results in worse performance.
Because of the coordination costs. Think about the learning curves and particularly the quality verification time.
Oh, I see.
Right? If an AI generates a complex financial summary, the human professional can't just blindly pass it along. They have to verify it.
Yeah, they have to read the whole thing.
Exactly. The time it takes to parse a nuanced document, spot hallucinations, and correct subtle contextual errors, well, it often completely offsets those 40 to 60 minutes of individual time savings you mentioned at the top.
I see why you think that. But let me give you a different perspective. What you are pointing to is the friction of early, unrefined deployment. It's the messy transitional phase.
I come at it from a different way. I am pointing to the persistent nature of complex knowledge work.
Okay, go on.
Let's look at the usage intensity data from Chatterjee to prove this. Early career workers and trainees are sending 8 to 9 more weekly messages to the AI than the average active user within their firm.
Right, the younger staff use it more.
Exactly. Meanwhile, managers, directors, and executives are sending far fewer. So what does this actually tell us?
What do you think it tells us?
It tells us AI is highly effective at compressing the skill distributions for junior employees who are doing routine, high-volume tasks. It is a fantastic task automation engine for formatting code or summarizing long documents.
Right.
But it fundamentally struggles to integrate into the complex, tacit knowledge-driven processes of the broader enterprise. Executive work just cannot be neatly packaged into a prompt.
Well, I actually think that usage distribution proves the horizontal utility of the technology. Yes, junior staff use it more intensely, but look at the breadth of participation.
Breadth doesn't mean depth.
But listen, 6 months after adoption, 11% of active users are in engineering, 9% are executives and founders, 5% are in finance, and 5% are in marketing. It spans the entire corporate hierarchy.
Okay, they all have access.
Yeah. Consider Deloitte's AI Dojo program. They provide consultants across all service lines with access to these tools. They don't mandate a rigid top-down use case. They let the professionals on the ground discover where the AI creates value for their specific role. This broad access is how you build necessary organizational fluency over time.
I come at it from a different way. Breadth of participation is exactly what masks shallow integration. Having 9% of executives occasionally query a chatbot to summarize a long email thread is participation, yes, but it is incredibly shallow.
I wouldn't call that shallow.
But pushing tools out to everyone and hoping they figure it out organically, even in a structured environment like Deloitte's AI Dojo, is just experimentation. And experimentation is not the same as execution.
But experimentation precedes execution. It has to.
Not always successfully. Think about what this looks like on the ground. When an early career analyst uses the AI 10 times a day to draft standard operating procedures, they're getting real, measurable utility.
Exactly.
But when a finance director logs in once a week to see if it can parse a nuanced regulatory change and then spends 2 hours verifying the output because the system missed a crucial piece of company history, that is a net loss of productivity. The organization's aggregate efficiency actually drops.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because you are judging a massive paradigm shift by its clunkiest, earliest phase. To really understand what's happening here, we have to look at the historical electrification of factories.
The Bresnahan and Trejtenberg theory?
Yes, the theory of general-purpose technologies. For those listening who might not know the history, when factories first got access to electricity in the late 19th century, they didn't see any immediate productivity gains.
Right, the initial electrification paradox.
Precisely. And why didn't they see gains? Because factory owners just took out the massive central steam engine and replaced it with a massive central electric motor.
Yeah, they kept the old layout.
Right. They kept the exact same complex, inefficient network of physical belts and shafts that transferred power across the factory floor. They didn't change the workflow. They just swapped the power source. It took years, sometimes decades, for industrial engineers to realize the true magic of electricity. You could put small, individual electric motors on every single workbench.
They had to physically redesign the architecture of the building.
Exactly. They had to tear down the factory and organize it around the new technology. That is exactly what we are seeing in the Chatterjee data. Companies are currently in the messy, frustrating phase of reorganizing their digital factories.
Okay.
Right now, they are trying to attach an electric motor to old steam-era belts.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. Tearing down a physical belt and shaft in a 1920s textile mill is an engineering problem. You can measure it, you can map it, you can build it.
And you don't think digital workflows are the same?
No. Tearing down an enterprise workflow in a modern knowledge economy is a human problem. You are falling into what researchers call the substitution fallacy.
The substitution fallacy?
Yes, it's the mistake of thinking you can just drop an AI into an existing human task without disrupting the invisible web around it.
But the substitution fallacy is exactly what organizations need to avoid. It's the mistake of assuming that automating one individual's task automatically improves the whole organization's output.
Exactly.
But look at companies that have moved past this. Accenture avoided the substitution fallacy perfectly. They didn't just tell their lawyers, hey, use AI to draft contracts faster. They completely redesigned the contract review workflow.
How so?
They changed the handoffs. The AI now generates the initial draft and spots standard deviations. The legal specialists completely step away from document production.
Really? They don't draft at all?
They don't draft anymore. They focus entirely on complex negotiation strategy while automated systems handle the routine approvals. By changing the workflow, they reduce cycle times by 60%. That is putting the electric motor directly on the workbench.
Accenture is an edge case, and I'll tell you why. Contract review is a highly structured, rules-based workflow. It has clear parameters and binary outcomes.
Well, sure, it's structured.
But most enterprise workflows are not structured like a legal assembly line. Most knowledge work relies on informal coordination, hallway conversations, and tacit knowledge.
Tacit knowledge being the things employees know but aren't written down anywhere.
Exactly. It's institutional memory. Let's say Sarah in accounting is handing a quarterly report to John in marketing.
Okay.
Sarah knows John hates pie charts. She knows he always double-checks the Q3 revenue because of a glitch they had 3 years ago. So she formats the data in a very specific way. She maybe drops a quick note in his inbox explaining a discrepancy.
Right. Humans adapting to humans.
Yes, that is a human workflow filled with implicit quality checks. When you insert an AI into the middle of that, it's like trying to translate a highly localized inside joke to a stranger. It loses the context that only the humans in the room understand.
But that's where the workflow redesign comes in.
But mapping human workflows isn't like mapping a factory floor. MIT research confirms this. They found that AI deployments frequently stall precisely because organizations lack readiness to handle the disruption of these unwritten human systems.
Okay, I hear you on the human systems.
We have to look at the human dimensions systematically. If you look at the 2025 PubMed systematic review on the workplace impacts of AI, you see severe spikes in job insecurity, mental health impacts, and anxiety among workers facing these massive redesigns.
Yeah, the psychological impact is definitely real.
It's massive. Think about the psychology here. When people are anxious about their obsolescence, when they feel their implicit, unwritten value is being bypassed by a machine, they do not innovate. They hoard their knowledge. They protect their territory. You cannot simply engineer away human anxiety with a better process map.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Because the anxiety, the hallucinated outputs, the friction you were describing, these are all symptoms of a very specific, fixable deficiency.
Which is?
The lack of foundational data infrastructure. When Sarah has to spend 2 hours verifying an AI's work, it's almost always because the AI is operating on generic training data, rather than the organization's specific historical ground truth.
You're saying the AI simply doesn't know the inside joke because it doesn't have the context of the company?
Precisely. Public generative models know the internet. They do not know why a specific financial decision was made in your firm 3 years ago. The friction disappears when companies make those massive complementary investments in their data foundations. Look at Salesforce. They didn't just deploy a generic chatbot and hope for the best. They spent years building Customer 360.
Right, their unified platform.
Exactly. It's a massive data infrastructure that pools all their sales, service, marketing, and commerce data into one unified graph. Or look at Corning Manufacturing. They focused their AI on predictive maintenance, but they only did it after painstakingly integrating decades of historical maintenance logs and real-time sensor data.
Okay,
The AI isn't guessing. It is grounded in actual organizational knowledge.
which brings us to the fatal flaw in this entire scale argument.
Fatal flaw?
Yes. You are citing Salesforce and Corning. Let's look at the financial characteristics of the early adopters from the Chatterjee data. The median revenue of early adopting public companies is $2.3 billion.
They are large firms, yes.
The median employment is nearly 3,000 workers. Compare that to the non-adopters, who have a median revenue of just $210 million.
Well, they have scale advantages, certainly.
It is much more than a scale advantage. It is a massive barrier to entry. If true enterprise AI, the kind that actually moves the needle on productivity, requires millions of dollars in data governance audits, interconnected API systems, dedicated task engineering teams, and continuous learning infrastructure just to reach the break-even point?
I don't think...
Just to finish the thought, if that's what it takes, then this technology is not democratizing productivity at all. It is a luxury good reserved for the most resource-rich firms.
Well, I wouldn't call it a luxury good. I would call it a capital-intensive capability in its early stages.
But the prevailing narrative is that generative AI is a cheap, horizontal capability that will effortlessly lift the entire economy. If the only way to avoid that human-AI coordination friction is to have $113 million in R&D capital to rebuild your entire digital infrastructure, then the correlation we see in the data is flawed.
How so?
The correlation between intensive AI use and higher revenue per employee is likely just selection bias.
You mean they aren't productive because of the AI?
Exactly. Stronger, richer firms can afford the experimentation, the failure, and the costly workflow redesigns. The AI isn't causing the high organizational performance. The pre-existing high performance is paying for the AI experiments.
Look, the data does acknowledge that we need longer-term analysis to definitively separate selection bias from causal impact. But again, the theoretical framework of general-purpose technologies tells us that as the tools mature, the cost of those complementary investments inevitably decreases.
In theory, yes.
We are already seeing task engineering and complex prompt frameworks becoming standardized. What Salesforce had to build custom 5 years ago at a massive cost, well, it's going to be available as an off-the-shelf software as a service to a $200 million company in just a few years.
Maybe.
However, the fundamental point from both the MIT Sloan and the World Economic Forum research remains. Viewing enterprise AI as a simple plug-and-play software purchase is a guaranteed path to failure.
On that point, we are in complete convergence. The source material makes it undeniably clear that technology deployment fails primarily for organizational and human reasons, not technical ones.
Right.
If an enterprise just buys the licenses and hands them out to employees without deliberate task engineering, the technology will absolutely stall. I actually look at IBM's approach to the human dimension as the gold standard here.
Oh, because of how they handled the transition?
Yes, they didn't just deploy AI algorithms in a vacuum. They established an AI ethics board, they mandated that algorithms undergo strict bias testing, and most importantly, they created rigorous workforce transition and reskilling programs for the employees whose roles were fundamentally altered by AI.
So they addressed the mental health and job insecurity aspects you mentioned earlier head-on. They didn't ignore the human friction.
Exactly, because they recognize that the friction isn't a math problem, it's human. But even with those excellent programs in place, I maintain my core disagreement with your ultimate optimism.
Naturally.
The friction of human-AI collaboration, The need for those implicit quality checks, the loss of situational awareness when humans are taken out of the loop, the sheer coordination costs of managing a hybrid workforce, it will permanently cap organizational gains. Generative AI is going to remain an incredibly powerful, localized tool for specific task automation, like drafting documentation or formatting code. But it is not the holistic enterprise savior that will fundamentally reshape the economy's aggregate productivity.
And I stand by the evidence that the productivity J-curve is real. For those unfamiliar, the J-curve is the economic phenomenon where productivity actually dips down, creating the bottom of the J, because of the costs of disruption and learning, before shooting dramatically upward.
We are in the dip of the curve right now. The costs of workflow disruption and complementary capability building are highly visible, but the massive gains haven't fully materialized yet. But as companies move beyond routine task acceleration, as they learn to decompose and engineer workflows, build their knowledge management systems, and update their incentives, the aggregate enterprise value will inevitably explode. The fact that we are seeing a fourfold increase in usage intensity over just 9 months proves the organizational learning engine is already running.
The engine is running, certainly. The data absolutely proves that the journey of technological integration is actively happening across all hierarchies of these organizations. The volume of experimentation is undeniable.
Which leaves us with a fascinating landscape to watch unfold. Will organizations be able to build the necessary data infrastructure and handle the delicate, complex reorganization of their human workflows? Or will they stall out in the dip of the J-curve, leaving AI as just a specialized, localized tool for early career task acceleration?
I'd invite everyone listening to look closely at their own organizations. Think about your daily workflows. Are your leaders truly reorganizing the factory floor to unlock new value? Or are they just bolting a shiny new motor onto an old, broken process and expecting you to go faster?
Because ultimately, to circle back to where we started, having a Formula One car in the garage is an incredible technological achievement. But until an organization takes the time to rebuild the roads, change the traffic patterns, and train the drivers to handle the new speeds, you are still going to be stuck in traffic. The journey from initial access to genuine transformative integration has only just begun. Until next time.